Good morning, Sri Lanka. What a way to start the early AM than look into this pretty face. I'm your host, Jason. Good morning, it's a Friday. Today in the studio we have a great author who's well known for his book, Colombo, A Critical Introspection. He's here in the studio, Vimarshana Vijay Surya. This book was launched just over a year ago and we had him on the show. Today we're going to speak about how his journey has been so far since the release of the book. Good morning.
Morning.
How
Great
are
to
you?
be here.
Yes, you were really fast with the punch. Great to be here. Of course you are. So, anyways, the book Colombo, A Critical Introspection, which was released last year. How's the journey been so far?
It's been rocky.
Right.
But when you write a book that sort of upsets the apple cart, if you will, it's inevitably going to be so.
Right.
But it's been fun because obviously I kind of expected it, and I wanted to sort of shake people's paradigm a bit, if not change it.
Okay.
I don't think I've changed it in any way, but given them a few things to think about,
Right.
at least.
You know, when you just said that, for me, I just pictured what Alfred said to Batman in the Batman movie. Some men just like to watch the world burn. I'm joking. No, of course not.
Yeah.
I mean, does it ever... I mean, please, you'd like to get to see people actually really think when they read something and be like, wow.
Yeah, I mean, afterwards, I had this campaign where this book has gone over the world, across the world in terms of the Sri Lankan community, you know, the big centers of Sri Lankanness.
Right.
Melbourne, you know, Sydney, London, a few places in America. And I had this campaign called Read, Think, Spread.
Okay.
And I never wanted people to agree with me.
Right.
I mean, I do want that actually, but
Right.
I'm saying I wanted to catalyze thought, catalyze critical introspection, as the cover says.
Okay.
So it did, to an extent. It also catalyzed controversy.
Yeah.
But, I guess I'm one of those people who likes to...
It brings you great pleasure. Of course.
Yeah, it is.
Okay. All right. Now we'll get into detail about your campaigns and all that. First and foremost, why did you want to be a writer? That's simple as that.
I don't know. I think I answered this question when I was on here before, but I don't think anybody wants to be a writer. They just are.
Really?
And if anybody had known me in school, I had this longish phase, or I don't know if it's a phase or if it's age, but I had this phase where I don't think anybody would have thought the last thing I would be a writer. And I went back to my high school, and I gave a little talk about the book.
Okay.
This was back in 2012.
Yeah.
And the students were receptive, I suppose, but the teachers, some of whom were back, my teachers when I was in school, not too long ago, I like to think, they were the bamboozled, perplexed, shocked look that they had. How did this guy... or what is this guy even doing? Okay? And so I guess there are some people who say this is my ambition. Writing was never my ambition, but it was my ambition in a sense. It was it was in me, and I guess I am a writer, and it takes years to discover that, for me at least, because I started pretty late. I mean, I published this book when I was 28, which in the bigger scheme of things is pretty early, but in terms of finding what you want to do is pretty late. So,
But did you always know that this was like a passion inside
No, I didn't. I had a passion for ideas and thinking and philosophy and stuff. I didn't even know that those labels were there, though. I just thought about stuff. Okay. I never thought I was gonna, maybe become a writer. But again, it's in you. Right. And if you're lucky enough, and if things fall into place, I guess it will happen for you in terms of who you are. Yeah.
All right, just for the people watching at home, in case they're just tuned in, could we have a quick brief of what this book is all about?
First of all, apologies. It's a very dense and some would say verbose book. Yeah. But I've got something about that later as well. But this book is a sociological take on Sri Lankan culture in the throes of modernity. Okay. So what we're looking at here is and then Colombo is the frontier of that. Colombo is at the vanguard of that, right? How our traditional Sri Lankan culture, something we value, something we treasure, perhaps more than anything else, how it's undergoing inevitable changes due to the imperatives and realities of modernity. So how our values are changing, how our thought styles. That's my favorite essay in this is about how thought systems, how the signature thought systems of Sri Lankans are changing or not changing,
Right.
and how they're changing,
Right.
and what particular things I can say about that change. So yeah, it's about basically Sri Lankans. Put it in a nutshell, though I've never done that in this book.
Right. So now, when you speak about like what thoughts, again, that's leading to psychology and stuff.
Yeah.
How much of research did you have to go through to actually write this book?
It's not an empirical research-driven book where there's like studies and questionnaires and facts and figures.
Yeah.
There's a tiny bit of that, but it's more like I grew up in another country, okay,
Yeah.
whose cultural values and specifications are completely different from Sri Lanka's, and I came here when I was about 8 or 9, and I was obviously Sri Lankan, and it was a big shock to me. It was a paradigm shake for me, and this is my philosophical introspection, sociological introspection on that. So it's
Okay.
not formal research driven.
Okay.
So it's never going to be the like sort of like a PhD kind of thing where you research, you follow the empirical method. It's my introspection,
Right.
and it's sort of like a Sri Lankan introspection, a native introspection on our values from a philosophical, sociological perspective.
Right.
So, yeah.
So would you now that would be a contributing factor to the inspiration behind this concept? What do you think is that played a major role to inspire you? Like, you know what, I'm going to write this.
Yeah.
I'm going to put this down on paper.
I said a lot of things in the last interview, but I've actually thought about it a lot. And you know what? The one word I can say that inspired me to write this book is absence. Just absence.
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 Why absence?
Absence.
Please enlighten me.
Yeah, I'm trying to be a little mysterious here, but it's not that's not that complicated. It's
Uh-huh.
basically, if you take books on Sri Lanka, you go to whatever bookshop, it's all about usually two topics: history. Okay, we had this great civilization here, we had this great civilization there. Colonials came, ruined
Right.
everything, and stuff like that, or the war. Right.
Right.
So there's the non-fiction literature of this country is very staid. It's very dichotomous. There's just
Right.
two. Yeah. War, history. Okay. And we have very little things about contemporary Sri Lankan culture.
Right.
And it's this absence of literature about who we are today and the imperatives, the realities that we face today.
Yeah.
That was the inspiration for this book, other than the personal inspirations,
Yeah.
which I've already talked about. But the philosophical inspiration was just absence.
Right.
This is one of the few books, I would like to think the only book, but I don't want to be that presumptuous, but the only book, few books, okay, which deals with our culture today. So there'll be stories about clubbing, there'll be stories about cricket,
Right.
in a sort of a philosophical and sociological way. There'll be stories, some of which stories I cannot mention on TV. Okay, fair few stories, but contemporary.
Yeah.
No history. History is only important as so far as it has got us here.
Right.
Not as just a dead record, a museum piece.
Right.
Yeah. So that's the inspiration.
So wait, let me get this straight. Would you say that in this country or there are a lot of countries like Sri Lanka, but that they would use history as a platform to the future, like they would just follow that?
Yeah, I mean, the study of history can be two things. History for the study of its own sake, like for instance the Dutch period, the British period, the Anuradhapura kingdom, and just a self-contained study
Right.
of that particular period. But also history could be how we got here,
Yeah.
and what that portends, what that means for the future, right?
Right.
So my take is completely the latter. I'm not interested in history in any way in terms of a self-contained thing, not because I'm actually not interested, because there's a plethora, there's plenty of literature on that, But my thing is, how has history gotten us here,
Yeah.
and what does that mean for us going forward? Because it's very significant. Our cultural values and the absence of key values are the fundamental driver of who we are today and the fundamental guide of where we will be in 10, 15 years and who knows ahead. Right? So my thesis is that history is important for me in this book,
Right.
as a guide to where we are going, and of course as a understanding of where we are at. So
Right.
Not a historical book at all, a very contemporary book.
Okay, now speaking about your history, you were in England, if I am correct.
Yes.
Since you and you came back to Sri Lanka when you were 9.
Yeah.
You, like you said that played a huge role in writing this book as well, because you got a lot of experience from that.
Yeah.
Was that the only part that helped?
Well, that wasn't the only part. That was a key part, because what happened was I was lucky and unlucky enough. I was unlucky in terms of coming back into this culture. I was like a little bit of an outsider.
Right.
But outsider, all the sociologists, all sociologists of the past have had the advantage of being an outsider, where you can look with a little bit of distance, perspective, and see perhaps what other people are so engrossed in that they can't see. It's too close to them to see.
Right.
So that was one of the reasons. That was what I would say the main reason. But I guess my father in particular was a sociologist himself, so that played a role as well. But yes, I would say the primary influence was the fact that I was removed from this, and then put back into it.
Okay.
And yet I was a Sri Lankan, so I couldn't have this complete who cares attitude. And then from a young day I wondered why are these different? Why are people separated by not too much of a distance, so different? Why are people who, set of people who colonized another, so entirely different? And then there are shades of differences in Sri Lanka as well, right? So you can see these very conspicuously when you're removed, especially at a young age, I suppose.
Wait, okay, so you came back when you were 9. Did you go back after that?
Never. Well, I went back outside of Sri Lanka, but never back to England. So,
All right, tell us about your high studies after you graduated.
Basically, I went to a college here, did a few years, went off to Australia, did some further studies, higher studies, and that was good as well. But again, by that time, my passion for understanding differences, cultural values was already instilled by my youth. And I did a major in college, of which, and when I was in university in Australia, about I think 80% of the time that I devoted to my education was in the library, reading philosophy and sociology books, and that was not my major.
Right. Okay. Well, what was your major?
Management.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so I just sort of did that to get that over with, and then focused on what I was passionate about.
You did that to get it over with for your parents, or for you?
Oh no, I paid for my own way in Australia to an extent. In the sense, I stayed with my auntie, so that was a good thing. But tuition, paid for my own fees. But I mean, I did that primarily not to get that qualification. It was a way out.
Right.
Because I wanted to obviously not, graduate from high school and just stay here. I wanted to see the world. So
see the world.
Yeah, it was good.
That makes sense. Aside from writing, what do you do?
I mean, I hate to call it my day job, because that sort of implies that writing is just something I do as a hobby.
Let's not say that.
I don't want to. I mean, I don't want to say that. But I would say, what I do is I'm a lecturer.
Okay.
So I've been teaching since I was 21 at tertiary college and university level.
Okay.
And after I came back from ACBT, I was at ACBT, and then after I went to Australia, and after that I, came back and taught at ACBT, and after that I've been lecturing. Right now I'm an MBA coordinator at a very new college.
Right.
What
is the subject that you teach there?
Yeah. Well. The subjects I've been teaching thus far is organizational psychology, a little bit of law, business law, and strategic management, marketing, and stuff like that. So right now, I do teach.
Does this lecturing does it inspire you when you're writing? Like now we know that you're writing a new book, and it's already written, and we'll speak about that later on. Would that play a role? Like, does that inspire you sometimes when